Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Lens. My name is Chad Thomas and that's Jamie Widener.
Yes, I am.
We are with Jott-Nyx Paranormal out of the Lancaster area. Welcome to our show, Paranormal Lens. What's going on, Jamie?
Man, it's busy time, busy season. Summer's here. Things are happening. Lots of stuff popping. Just keeping up. Keeping on.
Yeah.
How about you? What's going on your way? How was your week?
Busy. I've been going over to my dad's every Saturday. I thought I heard a voice in the one room, Jamie. I don't know. Maybe could have been. I don't know yet. But it's like I walked into my sister's old room, which was the one that has had a lot of activity in it, and it was just like I heard a female voice that wasn't there. So it could have been a neighbor, but I don't think so. It didn't feel like it.
Is there anybody that close that it would have been? I mean, it would have been pretty clear.
He has a next door neighbor, but all the windows were closed. Like it doesn't make sense. So,
well, to set the stage for that, your dad has a very old farmhouse.
Yeah, 1860s.
It was in the middle of nowhere. Now it's built up a bit, of course, but and it was active for you and your siblings growing up. Which is kind of the reason why we're here, right? That's set the path of interest. And I think we both have a similar experience that way in the house I grew up with. The same story, same situation where something was active, and it piqued my interest. So it's really cool that you get to go back to it, and now you're able to go back. Well, you always could because Dad's there, but your parents are still, they've owned the home. But now that you can go back in regularly now with what you know and the equipment and experience that you have, it's kind of different, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. One of these days I'm going to let me investigate, really, but
let me know. I'm in. Let me know.
Well, he doesn't want to stir anything up.
It's fair.
He replaced the carpet on the steps when a couple summers ago, and I'm like, I'll come one week and take the carpet off, and then I'll come back in the next week and put the carpet back on. He's nope. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, damn well I don't want to hear what's happening on those steps every night.
All at the same time.
That was one of the things. Every night we would have a residual walk up the steps and down the hallway. So anyway. So yeah, that was interesting. Went to a school board meeting last night. It was something that was pretty important to my family, and we went, and it was an experience and a good experience. So
any chairs being thrown or...
No, nothing that bad. No,
okay, that wasn't the worst they could have been.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and a net positive, I know from as I'm interested in this as well.
Yeah,
a net positive outcome. So
very good. Hey, Jim, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So anyway, the Lynches are back.
Oh no, there goes the neighborhood.
So. Anyway, but we're here tonight. I'm going to talk about Hershey, Jamie. So,
why are you talking about Hershey again, Chad?
Well, because believe it or not, there's some paranormal stuff that happens in Hershey.
I'm thinking it's because I put it on the list and forgot about it. So,
well, yeah, there is that.
Well, you know what? Hold on. Before we get to that, I have to tell you, I forgot. I completely forgot. Saturday morning, I went to what's called the Macabre Market. And it was at Mount Bethel Cemetery here in Columbia, PA. A oddities flea market, for lack of a nicer way of saying it, is the Macabre Market. I ran into the Lynches and a few others. Jay and Courtney from the team were there, and they have their own Habs Auditorium, I believe it's, or Oddities. I forget the exact name. Sorry. They have their booth there, and there was a lot of vendors selling a lot of unique things, and a Hearst car show. And it coincided with an event in town called Thunder on the River, which is an annual fundraising car show that shuts down all of downtown Columbia. So I went with M, and as as it goes. And then while we were in town, I was asked if we could go visit the Commonweal, which was open, which we did as well. We went in and to see if we could talk to Charlie. So we had a busy afternoon, late morning, early afternoon on Saturday. I totally forgot about it because so much other stuff happened Sunday. But it was a really cool event. And I know they're around the areas, it's a kind of not an exclusive thing here. So if you do get a chance to find one in your area, Macabre Market or an oddities market of any kind, you have any interest whatsoever, I highly invest that you go to it and check it out because there's a lot of cool stuff. And supporting local small business guys too. Which can be a bad idea.
So I also know that you found a coffee shop because I got a bag of coffee for Father's Day. So
well, yeah, you did, and I know that's a different thing altogether. That was not actually a coffee shop; it was a store that had coffee available. So,
okay,
yeah, I hope you enjoyed it.
I will. I haven't gotten there yet, but
okay.
So anyway,
happy belated Father's Day as well to you and all.
I appreciate that. So thank you. So I'm going to jump into Hershey a little bit here. Thanks for the idea. I appreciate it.
Oh, anytime.
So anyway, the original plan for tonight was to look at the Hotel Hershey. But when I started digging into it, I realized there may not be enough to fill an entire show. But when I was researching, I discovered that there were a lot of other areas tied to the Milton Hershey legacy that have some strange stories that go along with them. So let's start off a little bit with the history about the town of Hershey. First of all, Hershey is not a town. It is a unincorporated community and a census designated place, but there is no town of Hershey. Okay. What we know is Hershey is part of Derry Township and is governed by a township board of supervisors. When Milton Hershey was looking for a place to set up his factory, the area was actually known as Derry Church. It was later changed to Derry Township. So where did this name of Hershey come up with? Obviously, Mr. Hershey was the name, but why did the area start getting called Hershey? Once he established his factory there was a railroad stop, and they needed a name for the railroad stop. So it started getting called just Hershey because they were stopping for Mr. Hershey stuff, and the name stuck, and that's what it's been referred to as ever since. So that's the story of the name.
Hey, Jason.
Let's see. So who is Milton Hershey? Hershey was born in Derry Church on September 13th, 1857, to a Mennonite family of Swiss and German descent, and grew up speaking Pennsylvania Dutch. Having only a 4th grade education, Hershey was set up as an apprentice to a confectioner in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, named Joseph Royer. He studied 4 years with Royer and then set out on his own. He started in Philadelphia, but went on to New Orleans, Chicago, and New York City. After 2 failed attempts to start a business, he came back to Lancaster in 1883 and started the Lancaster Caramel Company. This business was a success, and by the early 1890s, he had 1,300 workers in 2 factories. In 1893, he traveled to the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, and there he learned about some new ways of making chocolates. The Germans were showing a lot of stuff there, so he learned about some new ways of making chocolate, and this sparked his interest in becoming a chocolatier. In 1894, he started experimenting with making chocolate while working at the Lancaster Caramel Company and created a second company specializing in chocolate. On August 10th of 1900, he sold the Lancaster Caramel Company to the American Caramel Company for a cash price of, get this, $1 million in 1900. Adjusted for inflation, the value today would be $37 million. Hershey sold everything except his rights to the chocolate company, the chocolate recipes, and the chocolate making machinery. In 1903, he used the money from this sale to purchase land near where he grew up in Derry Township, or in Derry Church. And it is here that he would build his factory, which opened in 1905. He created Hershey's Milk Chocolate, which was the first nationally marketed chocolate of its kind. So while Hershey had a vision for success, that vision also included his workers. He had a sense of moral responsibility and benevolence towards them. His vision included a community around his factory. He didn't want to end up with a typical company town of row homes that all looked the same. He developed a community with comfortable houses, affordable transportation, an outstanding public education system, and plenty of recreational and cultural activities. His town had tree-lined streets with manicured lawns and had 1 and 2 family brick homes built on them. Let's see. On May 30th, 1906, he officially opened the park that he had been building. The park expanded over time to include a swimming pool, amusement rides, and a ballroom. It didn't take long for people to start making the trip to Hershey via trolley car or train. Eventually, he added, as more tourists came to visit, he added more to the park. Eventually, he added a miniature railroad, an amphitheater, a water flume ride, bumper cars, a roller coaster, and a carousel. During the construction of the park, a local man named Franz Zinner was given 12 prairie dogs by a former neighbor of his. Zinner didn't know what to do with them, so he reached out to Hershey, who agreed to take care of them and display them in the park. After Zinner's same friend sent him a black bear cub, the pair decided that they should build a zoo. In 1910, the zoo officially opened with displays of lions, leopards, monkeys, exotic birds, a bear, and 12 prairie dogs. Let's see. In 1905,
Amanda.
Hey, Amanda, how are you?
Shall we say fellow weirdo? I resemble that remark.
In 1909, Hershey and his wife also founded the School for Orphans, which still operates today. Now, here's an interesting fact about the Hersheys. In 1912, Hershey and his wife were in France and had planned on returning to the United States via a ship in the White Star Line named the Titanic.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Luckily for Hershey, he had to return earlier than expected, and his wife remained in France with friends, neither of them getting on the doomed ocean liner.
Wow.
Can you imagine how different things would have been if they had made that trip on the Titanic?
Can I give you a quick side story there?
Yeah.
So Widener is my last name. If you're familiar with the Philadelphia area, there is Widener University, which is a connection to my family. And several of my family members were on the Titanic and went down with the ship. So things could have been a lot different in our tree line, if you will, than what we came up with to get this far. So, yeah, that's a lot of stuff happened with that. Amazing. There's a lot of connections people can make.
Yep.
Especially in our area.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry. No, it's okay. Let's see. When the stock market crashed and the Great Depression started, Hershey had a town that had his factory workers and about 600 construction workers that had built his factories and other infrastructure. Knowing that they would be unemployed and he would have to take care of them one way or another, he decided to use them to build things for the town. He started what is known as the Great Building Campaign. He had workers, building materials were at a low cost, and a chocolate product that was still making a profit because of the way he was doing it. So he invested that money back into the town. His workers had a purpose, and they were able to feed their families. There's one story of Mr. Hershey watching as 2 steam shovels were doing site prep for the hotel. The site foreman approached him and proudly said, "These machines can do the work of 40 men. Hershey looked at him and said, "Take them off. Hire 40 men. This is how he cared for his town and his people. Let's see. During this phase, the town grew and added many buildings. In 1933, Hershey opened the theater, showing the movie Pilgrimage. For the first 7 years, the theater served the vaudeville circuit. In the 1940s, the theater transitioned to first-run movies and touring theater companies. The theater still functions today, and you can see all types of shows and concerts there. We'll come back to the theater in a little bit when we talk about the hauntings. Other establishments that Hershey added included the Hershey Country Club, which opened in 1930, using the first floor of Hershey's High Points mansion as the clubhouse. The Hershey Park Arena opened in 1936, and it was the home of the Hershey Bears. The team originated in 1935 and had its first game in the arena in 1938. When it was built, it was the largest monolithic structure in the United States that didn't have a single seat with an obstructed view.
Yeah.
Hershey was approached to sponsor a national rosarium in Washington, D.C., but instead he decided to create a nice garden of roses in Hershey instead. In 1937, he opened a 3.5-acre rose garden. By 1942, it had expanded to a 23-acre botanical garden. As amazing as all of these are, we still haven't talked about his most spectacular project. In 1933, Hotel Hershey opened. It was his crown jewel, and it sits on the hill that overlooks the town. Hershey traveled the world, and you can see that influence throughout the entire building. When it opened, it had 170 rooms and several restaurants. One of the restaurants, called the Circular Dining Room, was designed with the influences from Hershey's travel. He was often dining alone as he traveled and was usually put in the corner since that table had fewer seats. When the restaurant was being designed, he insisted that it be a circular shape and no central pillars. That ensured that all seats had a good view. And an interesting aside to the history of the hotel happened in 1942. Milton S. Hershey had already worked with the government to develop cocoa-based military rations so he could keep in business during the war effort. He had connections with the War Department. During World War II, there were ambassadors from, I'm going to mess this name up, Vichy, France, stationed in Washington, D.C. When the Nazis invaded and occupied Vichy, the Vichy regime was forced to hand over all the American diplomats to the Nazis. It put the U.S. Secretary of State in a precarious situation, and he began to question what he should do with the Vichy staff in the United States. The U.S. was not at war with France, but the embassy staff was now in the hands of the Germans. That put the diplomat from Vichy, Gaston Henry Hay, in a very strange diplomatic position. Some people believed that Henry Hay was a Nazi sympathizer, but they were still technically ambassadors. So there was a fine line to walk there. On November 12th of 1942, Joseph Gassler, the general manager of the Hotel Hershey, made a suggestion to the Secretary of State, Hull, in a letter that I'm going to quote from here. I have the honor to advise you that Hotel Hershey has placed its facilities at your service. I shall be very happy to have these people as our guests and assure you, my dear Secretary, that we will do our utmost in every respect to give the high standards of service which the famous Hotel Hershey knows how to give. In the letter, he requested $7.50 per day for adults and $4 per day for children and any guards that would live there. The State Department would also be responsible for gratuities and incidental expenses. One can only guess that Hershey and Gassler came up with a plan to keep money coming in during a trying time and to help elevate Hershey's standings. So on a dreary November evening, the embassy staff and their families were taken up the hill in Hershey, past the quickly erected guard towers, through the barbed wire fence, to their luxurious confines. Over the next 10 months, up to 94 French citizens were held captive at the hotel, which also housed the guards. Although not allowed to leave unescorted, the French were able to make use of the sprawling lawns, the rose gardens, a 9-hole golf course, tennis courts, a game room, and a large patio offering a stunning view of Hershey Park. A hastily built chapel provided a space for Sunday Mass. Most of the wartime Hershey town didn't know what was going on up on the hill. Since the town was blacked out for the war and the factories were busy producing rations, they were pretty busy. It is rumored that the French dressed up in formal attire for meals, which included Burgundy wine paid for by the U.S. government, though the detainees were forced to pay for their own mixed drinks.
Oh, wow. There's that.
The French were slowly repatriated until the number of the people at the hotel didn't justify keeping them in Hershey. On September 30th of 1943, Henry Hay and his 16 guests were relocated and the 16 other guests were related to a facility in Warm Springs, Virginia. The very next day, Hotel Hershey immediately opened its doors to the public again. The hotel still operates and has added a spa. If you're looking for luxurious accommodations, including chocolate spa options, it's definitely worth checking out, if you don't mind some extra guests in your room. The hotel has many stories of noises and footsteps. We know that these can easily be explained away in an old building. One of the stories that seems to keep coming up is that of an apparition of a man in a straw hat and a mug in his right hand. Oftentimes, he is seen holding a child by his left hand. Now, Hershey never had children of his own, but we know that he did support many children through all his philanthropic works. Another story that has been told is of hovering over beds, accompanied by shadows and whistling coming from the closet and bathroom areas. So this is like a black shadow that hovers over beds.
Okay.
One guest reported that she put her cell phone on the bed and went to use the bathroom. While in the bathroom, she heard something fall on the floor. She came out to check and found that her cell phone was on the floor across the room. She placed it back on the bed, returned to the bathroom, and had the same thing happen again. She then put the phone in a heavy bag and yelled, "Try throwing that." When she went to bed, she was awoken by something on top of her later that night. She yelled at it and told it to leave, and she went back to sleep. Now, this is a really brave woman, if you ask me.
I like this person.
Apparently, she was extremely exhausted from her travels. When she went to check out the next day, the desk agent noted her room number and asked if everything was okay. She replied, "Yes, but that room is haunted." The agent said that they were surprised that she stayed all night. One employee posted a story that they would come in to open up in the morning and they would be the first one there. As they started the morning rounds of unlocking, turning lights on, and making coffee, they would hear footsteps and movement as if someone else was there. But upon checking, they definitely were alone. And this happened over and over and over. So it was like an every morning thing. The other thing that they noted talking to coworkers about was the smell of a fresh, fruity smelling cigar smoke. Apparently, this was a trademark of Milton Hershey, and the hotel is not the only place this is noted. Now, the other thing that they noted in the article was that the housekeeping staff had plenty of stories, but they did not elaborate on this. So, you know, I'm sure housekeepers have tons of stories, but they want to keep their job and they want to keep their sanity, so they probably don't share them that much. So let's move back to the theater. There are several stories that I found that were posted on a website about October of 2011. The writer had interviewed a close friend of the family who worked as a security guard for the Hershey Company. He rotated shifts and assignments. One night he was assigned to the Hershey Theater, and as he was doing his rounds, he checked the auditorium that seats about 2,000 people. He walked down the aisle, checked some other areas of the theater, and went back to walk up the aisle and found himself face to face with a life-sized cardboard cutout of a celebrity that was to perform there. If that had been there when he started his rounds, he would have knocked it over. So while he was backstage, this appeared in the aisle. Now, you may think another guard was playing a prank on him, but he was the only one working in that area that night, and he checked to make sure the doors were locked and no one had snuck in. He took the cutout and placed it on the stage with some other props, but felt like he was being watched the entire time he was moving it. He and many other guards discussed the fact that they heard footsteps in the empty building, and some nights it sounded like the auditorium was packed with an audience watching a show, but at 2 or 3 a.m., the theater had already been empty for hours. The security guard relayed another story about a group of contractors that were working on a below-ground corridor. These contractors were not aware of any of the rumors that there were spirits that roamed this hall and the elevator. The contractors told him that they would get on the elevator and it seemed to have a mind of their own. They would arrive or go to leave and get on the elevator. It would just randomly go to certain floors. The doors would open and it was as if someone was getting on or off the elevator. Then it would go back to the floor that they tried to go to. The last straw for these contractors was when they were working in the corridor and they noticed a Native American standing at a distance glaring at them. It was at this moment that they left the building, leaving their tools behind, and never came back.
Wow.
So that's that one's sort of interesting. I'm not sure what the Native American tie-in is, but all the land around here at one point.
It's all native land, right?
Yep.
Original land. Okay.
I have one more story about the theater, but I'm going to save that one for the end. So we'll come back.
Excellent. It means it's a good one.
Yeah. So I came across a couple of stories about Hershey Park itself. The first one I found was about a maintenance worker who was killed when inspecting and repairing a section of track on the Comet roller coaster, a wooden roller coaster that dates back to the 1940s. It is said that after doing the repair, he fell to his death, and his spirit can still be seen roaming the track, seemingly forever inspecting the coaster. All right. When visiting Hershey Park, you may notice a lighthouse that seems sort of out of place.
Mm-hmm.
This lighthouse was built in 1929 at the pool that was there until 1971.
Okay.
There are stories of several children that drowned there over the years that the pool operated, and spirits of these children have been seen in old swimming suits of the 1940s era swimming suits. Another story about a ghost in the swimming area is one about a woman who owned a house that is in the area now occupied by the boardwalk. In the 1970s, when the park was expanding, the houses in this area were bought out. One woman who could not bear the thought of moving reportedly took her own life in the attic of her home. Employees near the boardwalk fry stand have heard moaning and screaming of a woman coming from what would have been the second floor area.
Oh.
So, just, a little interesting activity.
Yeah.
The park's carousel is also haunted. The current carousel is the Philadelphia Toboggan Company number 47 carousel. It was built in 1919 with a patriotic.
Hold on, Matt. It's a toboggan number 47.
It's the Philadelphia Toboggan Company.
Okay.
Number 47 carousel. So that was like the
model number,
serial number or model number. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was built in 1919 with a patriotic theme to honor the end of World War II. And it was originally in Liberty Heights Park in Baltimore. Hershey purchased it in 1944. The carousel's history before Hershey is unknown, so it's unclear what might cause the hauntings. The carousel often turns on at night. The lights turn on and the organ plays on its own as the carousel begins to slowly turn. This event happened multiple times since the carousel arrived at the park, being witnessed by multiple security guards over the years. One security guard spotted a shadow figure sitting at the operating bench for the ride, but the figure disappeared as he approached.
Yeah. That's my thought. It's not the ride it's haunted, it's the operator attached to it. Yeah.
So.
All right. Oh, that's creepy.
Mm-hmm. This is a little more recent. Another spirit, I'm old, Jamie.
I'm aware.
Another spirit is 16-year-old William Harder, who was killed at the park on August 25th, 1977.
During our lifetime. Okay.
During our lifetime.
Yep.
He was a park maintenance worker working on the newly installed Super Duper Looper roller coaster as part of a summer vocational program. Okay. When the coaster first opened that year, the car stalled on the tracks. Harder had been repairing a magnetic control device designed to stop the train when one of the cars began rolling down the track, striking and killing him. Various park employees, including maintenance workers and security guards, have reported seeing a shadow figure walking along the tracks of the Super Duper Looper for years. He's one of the most frequently seen spirits at the park, usually appearing at night or when the ride isn't in use.
Wow.
So, and this one I actually was able to find a newspaper article backing up this accident.
Okay.
So, remember the hotel when I talked about the employees smelling smoke or fruity cigars?
Yep.
Apparently that happens at the park as well.
Oh.
Many times over the years since his death, Hershey has been spotted after hours by employees. Sometimes it's Mr. Hershey and the smoke, and sometimes it's just the smoke. Maybe Milton Hershey is still keeping tabs on his beloved park and making sure it is still up to his standards and remains the sweetest place on earth. So, most of the things I've talked about here are spirits, that seem like what we expect. Nothing really scary, nothing really evil.
Yeah.
But I'm going to read a story from the theater exactly the way it was printed, word for word. Okay. It's from the same security guard that gave us all the other stories. The writer of the story, the writer of the documentary used the name Jim to protect his, so he could stay anonymous.
Yep.
So this is just going to read it as it came. Jim shrugged at me as he lit a cigarette and took a hard drag. His expression slowly changed from a smile to a frown. This one night, I was going backstage to do some checks. Jim took another long drag and proceeded to tell me that after checking some of the backstage, he had to go upstairs and behind the stage to check a few of the other rooms. I always got a sinking feeling in my stomach going up those steps, kind of like I shouldn't be going up here. Jim flicked a couple of light switches on and walked up the steps. His flashlight glared down the dim-lit hallway at the top of the staircase. I then checked one of the 3 rooms up there carefully and moved on. Jim took his time in spite of the feeling of fear in his gut. I get inside this one room and switch the light on, and there it is. Jim was frozen in complete shock at the sight of a man standing up on a chair on the other side of the room. At first, I couldn't believe it. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. At the same time, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Jim went on to explain that the apparition had the expression of anger all over its face. The vibe I got from this man was not good. I could feel complete dread and misery. Jim's eye picked up on something on the far and dark corner of the room. She was lying down and sobbing. At the time, I couldn't believe I was seeing this. The apparition of the young sobbing woman looked up at the man on the chair. Suddenly, to Jim's horror, he witnessed the man, who was furious, reach up for a noose and wrap it around his neck. The ghost of the young crying lady began to reach out to the man, and then the chair the enraged spirit was standing on kicked out beneath him. Jim had enough time to see the man hang himself and witness his arms and legs reaching and kicking about. I thought I was going to die of a heart attack, but sure enough, I hauled ass out of there. It took me some time to get over what happened that night. Even though it was my job to check things out in that old theater, I sure as hell wasn't going up in that room. Also, I thought about quitting, but again, who would be paying the bills? As far as Jim had known during those days, none of the other employees had experienced anything like he did. A few of us knew the place was haunted, but other employees didn't seem to care. Jim laughed and wondered if the ones who thought the place was spirit-free actually went inside to do the security checks. When I asked him about what he had witnessed that one hard night, he just went into his own and his tone changed. I have no idea what it was all about, but I know one thing. The chair that this apparition was standing on was real, because it is something that I was used to seeing when I checked that room out. It was scary how that chair kicked out from under that man's feet. It was like it was all too real. I questioned Jim about what the ghosts were wearing. Oh, at the moment, I was pretty much scared out of my wits, but what I remember is it appeared to be classic attire people would wear during anywhere from the 30s to the 50s. One thing that really stands out and scares me is the evil expression on this dude's face. He was radiating pure evil from that look. Like I said, most of these stories are pretty tame, but this one gives me chills every time I read it. So, what do you think, Jamie?
Well, first, yeah. I want to say hi, Kyle. Sorry,
Hey, Kyle.
In the middle of the story there, so you didn't catch all that. But, theaters, we know, right? We've talked about a couple of them along the way. The energy, the passion, of performers and participants, and the staff. We have theater people in our family. We know. So I don't doubt that the theater is active, and the story, to me, the story is a little fantastical, maybe.
Right.
But it's just kind of hard to piece it all together. Like the interaction between the man and the woman, why he's angry. I don't know. I'm just like, wow. But the fact that the chair moved is crazy.
Right.
If true, and I have no reason to doubt it isn't. The park, tragedies happen. Like that's, and someday we'll probably need to do an episode on the 462 bridge between Lancaster and York County. The old bridge, the Veterans Memorial Bridge. Mm-hmm. It was at one point the longest concrete bridge in the world. And there are like 30 people who died on this bridge because they fell into places where they were pouring concrete forms, on this massive bridge, and they couldn't get rescued. So it's their resting place, So accident. My point is, workplace accidents happen, and in a park this, even the size that Hershey was then versus Hershey Park was then versus what it is now is not the same. But there's still the opportunity. As soon as the mechanical things get involved, heights get involved, moving parts get involved.
Right.
The risks are always, it's an inherent risk. Something can happen to you.
Yeah, there wasn't OSHA at the when this stuff.
Right, exactly. Some of the safety standards that we expect today weren't prevalent. And I can't think of a worst case way to go than the ride coming back on you. As the super duper looper situation. Like that's terrible because you know where to go.
Right.
The hotel. I mean, hotels are notoriously haunted as well. And I'm not surprised to hear anything that's been there. The story of the pressing weight against the chest is exactly as when I shared that would have been at the Hilltop House in Harper's Ferry last week. We talked about, and that's the movement of stuff. Is it a playful spirit just kind of messing around? I don't know. It is sometimes when your stuff gets knocked on the floor, but is it not so much more when it's on top of you, restricting you?
Right.
That's when the line gets crossed. So all of this is very plausible to me, and I have no reason to doubt any of it. The one thing I can tell you, Milton Hershey was a lot of things, but a true benevolent, kind person is definitely one of them. So of all the things that I would expect, and his passion for all of his stuff, the one thing I would expect is his presence to be there. So I'm not surprised to hear, the tale of the sweet cigar smell,
right.
where he's visible. He had that style sense with that straw hat. It's a lot of pictures I've seen of him is that, and he had a way of showing his wealth without overdoing it. And I can speak to this. There's back to the Lancaster Caramel Company, the original iteration of his empire. He had an office in Lancaster City, and that office became a nonprofit building. And his original office was the boardroom. And I had a chance to go there quite regularly. And just the fireplace wall was mahogany and intricately designed, and all of this really cool like beadwork and other pieces to it, that kind of piece on piece. You had to look at it for a while to see all of it because it was like an entire wall. And, the desk that was originally there was the same material and the same style. And it's like, you knew he had something going for him. Yeah, in that sense, so I can only imagine the passion that he had because he oversighted everything,
Right.
You guys were on it all. So his presence has to still be there. His energy is all over it. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew he was a very benevolent man. I just had no idea until I started digging into it, how much like the town that we know as Hershey with the Hershey Kiss lights and all that, that's all about him. Like he did that, and his he invented some of the chocolate processes and refined them, and like if we had lost him on the Titanic, things would
never be the same.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So
there's a couple of comments here I'd like to step back to. We kind of because you're in the midst of things. I didn't want to go too far. I think Jim has a really interesting point here, and I don't argue this. I think it's a true statement.
It goes with everything. I mean,
if you were to to give blood, would they find syrup instead? I don't know. And this one made me laugh out. Like I laughed to myself, but yeah, there's an age. Speaking of us being old, here's a sign of age as well. Although I got to tell you, my first concert was at Hershey Arena as well. And I chuckled a bit when you got there because I remember vividly seeing in my 20s and teens even seeing Bears games. And, it's great because there are literally no obstructive views. It was a great stadium. Right. It was also super steep.
Yes, it was.
And if you were in the upper level, it was even worse than the lower bowl. And I remember many times just getting up, between periods just to stand up. And if you lean a little bit, you feel like you're going, So I've had some near-death experiences there, just on my own balance level.
I think I saw the Harlem Globetrotters at the Hershey Arena.
I did too. We were probably at the same show.
Maybe could have been. Yeah. I remember my grandmother taking me there for some reason. It was one of those things that like
did mine. So.
Yeah.
Grandma's rock.
Yeah. I did forget to mention
concert there as well.
Okay. My first concert was actually at which I forgot to mention, the stadium. Hershey also built the stadium. Yeah. So, and that was Meatloaf.
Oh, I saw the Monkees. Go figure. But I did see. Speaking of the stadium, I did see you two there. So I won on that one.
Yeah, I saw Billy Joel there, but you still beat me.
Okay.
So
there's a lot. There still are a lot of great shows that come to the area. The arena's gone now. The stadium is still. The arena's new now, and on the other side of the property.
yeah,
One thing you mentioned though, that I thought was really interesting too, is going back to where the boardwalk is now was residential before.
right.
And if anybody knows what Hershey Park is, it's this massive amusement park here in Hershey, PA, and it's really close to us. We have passes. We go. The kids go all the time. But as it grew, it started to absorb land, and they were smart to buy a lot of stuff, because it has expanded through the years, and now there's umpteen roller coasters. It's like the most roller coasters anywhere around here, maybe more than anywhere on the coast at this point. But as it expanded, it took away houses and homes, because people were there because it was just farmland and a road, like 322 runs through there, 422, I forget which one it is, runs right in front of it. There's a lot of residential actually right off the park still on the one side. And, again, you talk about taking someone's place. So, it's a home, and people love their homes, and that could lead to activity because it's nothing to do with the park per se.
Right.
It's the property that the house was on is still, someone's attached to it. That energy is still there. So, the boardwalk is a pretty cool thing. It's, the wave pool and the lazy river and all that stuff. You wouldn't expect any activity to be there, but if you don't know what was there before,
right,
you would understand it.
It goes back to the Native American in the theater. Like that was not always a theater. It was not always farmland. It was something before that.
Someone's territory.
So.
There's competition to the coolest show we saw. So Heather, Ozzy, not so bad. But this one wins for me. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
I had help me, Jim. Just so you know, I had help me Rhonda stuck in my head earlier today. So, way to bring it back. Now it's in there again. Thank you.
So, I've done a couple load-ins at the Hershey, or the stadium as well. So, but the stadium, I believe, used to have a racetrack around it. From what some pictures I've seen.
I'm not old enough to remember that.
No,
if I do, I don't remember. It should say that.
And I didn't realize that it was up until 1971 that the pool, the actual pool, was in the park, and that's when the expansion really started to change the park. Right. And they filled in the pools and like have built other stuff over it. I think that's probably where some of the Tudor Village and all that stuff is now. So. Okay.
Well, pools are huge liabilities, right? I mean, all the public ones around here are kind of always on the edge of whether they're going to come back or not, because it's not about the the patronship and the pool cost and all that stuff. It's about the liability insurance.
Yep.
And it's huge, and then the risks that are inherent to them.
Yep.
I totally understand the need to close it, but then the pool gets replaced by a wave pool instead. Where the lazy river instead. So at least there's that, and a few other water attractions. So. Boardwalk is nice on a hot summer day. I can't argue that.
So jumping to this, what do you think about the hotel being used as a POW?
I can't call it that exactly, because they're certainly they may have been prisoners. It is the whitest collar prison ever, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's one thing that mentioned bringing the main guy bringing his like Doberman or I forget what dog it was down for dinner every night. Like it was just like, and they had to run of the place because it was closed to the public.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine seeing
a different room every night?
Seeing it with like barbed wire and like looking at it now, it's this gorgeous thing. I can't imagine what it looks like.
Different era, different time.
Mm-hmm.
Even the rates that you were saying, like $7 a day or $7.50 a day for a stipend. Mm-hmm. In 1940 something, that was a lot of money. So they were doing well for themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the room rate would have been, but I'm sure it was at least that, or not.
Well, yeah.
So in a comparable sense, they certainly did make out. Yeah. There's something at least.
So but yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. I didn't realize again, it's not an era that we lived through, but I didn't realize how many, like Hershey during World War II was blacked out. Like all the windows were blacked out. The factories ran, but they were run as dark as they could have been. Again, it's just not something that I think about. And
well, we're inland, we're not at the coast. If somebody would have come over us, from the air, it should have well been noted before it ever got close to here.
Right.
But, it's one of those, it's in the war machine, it's not a necessary thing to have the chocolate, but it is that if you take that away, you take away a comfort.
Right. Well, but actually,
and product that went out to the field, but
yeah, they Hershey, there was a special ration that Hershey developed,
right,
that was chocolate that gave them energy, but it didn't taste good. Because they didn't want them grabbing all the rations and eating them as a candy.
Right.
So it was chocolate. It gave them energy, but it was like you wanted it as a last resort.
Well, have you ever? I'm going to say I've done this. So cocoa powder. It used to come in a metal tin with a round lid, kind of popped off with a spoon. You were meant to mix that into your milk or your water. Milk's better, obviously, but water. I've been foolish enough just to see what it tastes like, and it is bitter and awful, and but then it is still chocolate. It's just powderized chocolate without the sugars and such, and the milk.
Right.
That's why you mix it into that. It's really good in coffee, actually. So I can say that, but. I can see that being a byproduct, that product being that product that continued. Actually, it makes sense. With some kind of powderation.
Yeah.
Powderation.
Yeah. Powderation. Yeah. Well, cocoa powder is used for baking, and there's stuff that is meant to add to milk that's sweetened a little. It has a little bit of sweetener. The stuff that goes in the milk you can eat. I've done that, but. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely, that stuff is gross. So, and Bert has an interesting question here. So, there was one person who said that they were going, in some of the places I found, they said they were going to investigate. I tried to reach out to them because they had left an email address. It was several years ago, so I don't know. I never heard back from them. But
well, it's a public place, right? And this, we deal with this at the brewery, because there's a hotel level above where we start the investigation night, in the ballroom, and we advise that it's off limits because the respect the privacy or the need for rest for the guests, and most of the guests are actually with us. It's funny, right? But there are those who aren't, and would you want a person walking up and down the halls, and at night everything's quiet, and if you're a light sleeper, you hear someone talking, it's going to wake you up. And you're obviously in an unusual place because it's not your home, the hotel. I've spent years in hotels by now, with traveling through a decade of it. And, you hear those things and they wake you up, and you may not be awake very long, but, it's just that thing. But all it's going to take is somebody to be awoken by it and knowing there's something active in the place anyway by hearsay or knowledge, and then calling the front desk, and then it's over, So you don't want the security guy showing up and saying, hey, you can't do this.
Right.
So you got to kind of be respectful, but I'm sure someone's done it. I'm sure someone's going to do it again. Do it with respect to the space. And
I'd like to find out what room that is.
I just thought that too. Like what room that was.
I was like, oh, you were in that room?
Yeah, that's the room I want.
I couldn't find that listed anywhere. So
okay, that's a stop at the front desk.
Yeah,
someday. We're up that way.
I was surprised how little information there was. There was information, but it was all clumped together, and all the stories of the hotel were in one place, and the same stories of the park were repeated over and over. So I found them on 4 different websites, but it was all pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, it's a capture situation, and it's probably not the first-hand story either.
Right.
So it's just
except for the security guard, that one was that was a guy.
Powerful story, so you can understand.
So,
all right.
So yeah, my thoughts are I agree with you. There's definitely energy there. There's definitely something going on there. Hershey made his mark, and he, he's not going to leave that, even if it is
still
residual.
has his mark. Yeah, it's not going away. It's gotten bigger.
So, and I'm sure he's looking back, smiling on what he was able to do, or I hope he is. So,
yeah,
the school for orphans is still going strong. I mean, it's not the same thing anymore, but it is
the Milton Hershey School, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, what's coming up, Jamie?
Yeah, we're doing stuff still, right? So let's any last thoughts from you guys? I mean, thanks for sticking with this. I'm sorry, Chad, again. I'm sorry I stuck you with this. But
it was fun.
You took it and you owned it, and you really made something special here. So thank you. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But if any thoughts, of course, just drop them in. We'll address. We got some stuff coming up. 2 weeks, a week away now. On the 29th, we are going to be back at the brewery. There's still tickets left there, but they are starting to go quickly, as they always do, closer to the event. We'll be back about 2 weeks after, in July 13th, about a month after, August 10th, September 7th. And yes, there will be more dates after September 7th, I assure you. We just don't have them yet official on the brewery website, so we can't post them here until they put them up. So, but there is some special guests coming in the fall and some things you don't want to miss if you are in and around the Lancaster County or South Central PA area. It'll be well worth the trip. Some really cool stuff. So, sweetest place on earth for the undead. Hey, everybody likes chocolate, right?
Yeah.
So, funny to that, I was at the grocery store this weekend and I picked up a s'mores kit with, everything in it in a box for a couple $, because getting all the stuff separately, I always have way too many graham crackers and not enough marshmallow or this or that. So like what you're supposed to have for portioning. So we'll see.
Actually, I got some of those for camp last year and they worked out really well.
Okay. Okay. That way everybody knows what they're supposed to do too. So we'll see how it works. It's fun to be out to the fire pit. So a couple episodes coming up, of course. We've been talking about these for a little while now, but next week I will tackle the lore of La Ciguanaba. After that, Chad will take on Eastern State Penitentiary, a request from Amanda. So hopefully you're with us on that week. Don't be there, be square. And after we're going to take a break the week of the 9th, we will not be here. We may put up an old episode, perhaps something just to hold the place, but that we don't forget it. We won't get out of sight, out of mind. The way the world is now. And then coming back strong with the Hollywood Mansion, which is our home base, our original home base location for the team. And then I'm going to do back-to-back and then tackle Brown Mountain Lights down in North Carolina. And then Chad's going to take on the fascinating tale of table tipping. I'm really interested in that one. Something that interests me a lot that I haven't had a chance to get a whole lot of experience with. So some really fun stuff. And then more after, of course, we have a whole program for the summer and fall covered. So, but if you would like to see something or hear something or learn about something or challenge us to present something, feel free to say so. We're always open to the idea of bringing something new in. This schedule can get changed, bumped, adjusted. It's not a big deal for us.
Yeah.
We'll put it to the front of the list and give us a moment to tackle it, of course, and do some research and investigate it. But we'll be happy to put it up and go with it. So bring it on.
Yeah.
And then the usual ways to find us, the obvious socials that you found us here on Facebook or YouTube, either or. But we do have a TikTok, Instagram, an Instagram page as well. So give us a like, give us a follow. We'll keep in touch with you that way too. So we already look at this. We already have this one. So Bert's skeptical on table tipping. I kind of am too, sir. You know me, I'm a skeptic. So that's why I'm very interested to hear about it and get more.
I've been in a table tipping session and I'm skeptical, but it was more to come. So
that's one of the things I think that I really appreciate. You and I, at least, and many members of our team, I think as well, are of a skeptical perspective first. We're not just going to dive into something. It's not a hook. Hook doesn't get set and we're pulled along by it. Right. We need to understand it first, see how it works, what it is. I think in the back of our minds, there's always the probability or possibility, at least, that it's a true thing and it's legit. But we want to see it first.
Right.
That's again. I said this every week. That's the difference between a ghost hunter and a paranormal investigator.
Right.
Well,
yep. Not that I'm not pushing this, but if anybody's interested, the bash is coming up in Gettysburg.
Yep.
Typically there is a person there, Stephanie Burke, who does table tipping one evening.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's something you have to pay for, but if you're interested in seeing how it works and what it's all about, it's an opportunity.
And it's a good way to connect with a lot of other folks in the field at the bash. Either way, the bash is it's going to come.
Yeah. So, just throwing that out there. It's an experience,
Yep. So. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about that a little closer. Of course, we have a couple weeks.
Yep, definitely. So.
There. Okay. All right.
So yeah, I think that's about it. We want to thank everybody for coming out again and hanging out with us for the last hour. I mean, again, it's one of those that I didn't think would go an hour, and here we are, almost 10 o'clock.
We say this before you see us every week. We get together, in this space before we go live, and we talk about what we don't give away what we're doing, but like I only have this much. I don't think it's going to take more than half an hour. An hour and 20 minutes later, we're like, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
The nights we think it's going to go crazy long, then wind up being 45 minutes or whatever. So.
And if we have Steve Deals with us, then everything's out the window, and it's like 3.5 hours, and all of a sudden we're like, we got to go to bed or the bathroom.
At that point, we got to pee, right? Yeah. So, geez, the man's a camel. I don't know. Love you, Steve. Shout out to you.
Yeah.
Those are marathons, though. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they're always great. So actually, every episode we work on together is great, Jamie, and I appreciate what you put into it. And
well, same to you. That's why I'm enjoying it. I really have enjoyed this, and here we are, episode 60. We didn't think we'd get 6, so
yep,
something to it. So thanks, appreciate it.
So.
All right, y'all, we're ready to go, and we'll see you next week. Be good, and stay spooky, and we'll see you soon.
All right, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.